Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hey everyone, welcome to another video on the JayBee
Hello.
and Milly channel. Today we are going to be reviewing another one of the new Scooby-Doo movies, which is The Ghostly Creep from the Deep. So we have got up this far in the series. If you've not seen any of the back catalogue, or if you're new to the channel, we have reviewed all the Scooby-Doo movies and we're now going through the series, and this is where we're up to in Scooby-Doo meets the Harlem Globetrotters. So I'm excited to be getting into this one. It's certainly one I've seen from my childhood, but one that I've not seen for well over 15 years, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. I had this. I don't know what part of the collection it was in. It was in one of those discs that was reflective, but you had the title on the rim of the center. If you remember that.
I think so.
And it was just called Scooby-Doo meets the Harlem Globetrotters. Some Scooby expert listening to this will know what edition I had. I think it's long gone by now, but I love the Globetrotters. I don't know them from anything else but this episode, so honestly I don't even know if they're a real basketball team or not. But yeah, let's kick us off with some plot summary. Let's break it down for people that haven't seen it for a while, or just like hearing how we explain these Scooby episodes.
Okay, so in Scooby-Doo either meets Harlem Globetrotters, which is the kind of edition JayBee had, or as the episode's known as, The Ghostly Creep from the Deep, Scooby and the gang meet up with the Harlem Globetrotters in that both the cars kind of run into some water as they travel through the fog, and that's how the two end up meeting. It's kind of a similar theme to what we've been working on throughout the series, really. But instantly the Harlem Globetrotters are so fun to be around. They really do add a whole new level of quirkiness to the episode, which is, I personally think, quite refreshing. So as the gang are the Mystery Machine's trapped, you see a ghost ship go past, which instantly as well, really nicely animated. It's a great start to an episode, certainly leaves you wanting to know a little bit more. And throughout this episode you come across, is it Swampy Pete?
Yeah, I just call him the old geezer until he reveals himself to be Swampy Pete, and then he's just, spoiler alert, some hunk.
I mean, yeah, so you know, have quite suspicious characters like Swampy Pete and that kind of thing, and ultimately you have to work out who's the ghost of Redbeard or what it is they're looking to do. It's quite a unique ending that we're certainly going to come on to throughout this episode, but I guess kind of heading first into some thoughts and feelings. So JayBee, what's your thoughts up to that initial interaction between the gang and the Globetrotters?
I mean, we'll establish the Globetrotters' position within the world of Scooby and the world of NLs. So what do you know about basketball, and do you know these Globetrotters?
I don't know what that weird little poop was I just did. So I don't really know of the Globetrotters. I know basketball's pretty big in America, so pretty much just presuming that it could be like the Raptors or something equivalent. Do you get what I mean? Yeah, I get that. I want to see the Toronto Raptors in an episode of Scooby, because there's some pretty cool people. You have to be very tall, I think, to be a basketball player, so I don't think I could quite do it, but yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we were discussing basketball at work today for some reason, and apparently there's a basketball player that's 6'3" and they're deemed short.
Oh, don't say that.
So yeah, I guess it's something you have to be relatively tall for.
Yeah.
But so what's your thoughts on, like, say they're traveling through the fog, they get stuck in the water, and you get the first interaction with the Globetrotters? First thoughts on that?
It's reminding me a bit of the Sonny and Cher episode, in that it's exactly the same almost as you'd expect from an episode of Where Are You, except there's a guest. So I expect Scooby and the gang to be driving through some foggy, boggy woodland, and I expect them to then, you know, go to some spooky town or some spooky shack within that woodland. What I don't expect usually is a special guest to appear, but of course that's what differentiates the new Scooby-Doo movies. So to me, this is honestly a bit of a, not bland way of going about things, but it's very by the book. It's just, where are you? Oh, look, on the way there we've met someone. So I don't really think too much of it, apart from the fact that it's what I expect.
What's your first thoughts on the Globetrotters though? Because I know from seeing them, I instantly really gel with them. I think they're really fun.
I was a bit disappointed because I expected it to be a bit more like they do this amazingly at the end, but I expected them to be like capitalizing more on the fact that they've got sports people, the fact that they're basketball players. So what I kind of thought we would have is Mystery Machine Park. I mean, this would be if it was subverting expectations, how I would have done it. Just Mystery Machine parked outside stadium, and the gang are almost at the Globetrotters game already, watching them play, and that's when we get some like shenanigans with monsters going on. So it's a bit like, it's cool that they've almost got their own equivalent of the Mystery Machine. It's like the Star-Spangled, I don't know, like stage wagon or something. I don't know. It's something cool. It's some Globetrotter-mobile. It's just, and I like their banter. I almost feel like this is another one that assumes that you know who they are already, and so we don't really get, oh, here's this Globetrotter who's known for these moves or has this sense of humour, here's that Globetrotter. We get that eventually, but I think it would have been nice to have a bit more of a way to like introduce them all.
I'm gonna disagree here with you, which is something I love to do, of course.
But why?
I think if they tried to differentiate them too quickly, you'd have been overwhelmed and not been able to appreciate them as a collective, or even the episode in itself, because you'd be trying to remember who 8 different people are. Like, I think it was difficult enough with the Three Stooges when they tried to establish them as individuals too early. So to try and do that with an even bigger group, I think would have presented a few problems.
Well, I think within my story, it could have worked to have maybe 3 highlighted, in that it could have been going through the game, and of course with sports you have commentators, so it could have literally been like, here we have Globetrotter number 1, but of course they'd use the names, you know, doing this, and you can kind of just get a bit of cheek from the Globetrotter. Like, if there's a funny Globetrotter, they could have maybe been like styling it out a bit more, like we see like messing around with fish tanks and stuff. If there's a more serious Globetrotter, maybe they just throw the ball and get the goal effortlessly. Like, I don't know, but I think the way the story is, you're probably right, because having to go through that massive bus naming everyone and listing their qualities would have been a bit cumbersome.
Okay, so taking a look at the concept of the villain as well. I mean, you don't see the ghost of Redbeard until quite far in, but you do see this big pirate ship, and I know you've got a thing for water, for boats. So what was your thoughts when you saw the pirate ship?
I loved it. I feel like I've been on a journey throughout our, you know, reviews of the classic shows, in that if you asked me before reviewing What a Night for a Night about animation cells, I think shamefully I would have poo-pooed them. Like, there's been occasions in interviews where I've fallen in love with particular pieces, like, who am I thinking? The James Tim Walker interview. The stuff he has from the Flintstones and Huckleberry Hound is incredible, and I think even Tom Ruger showed us some animation cells as well. But honestly, this episode impressed me so much because of the backdrop. It's not just blue. I don't know if you noticed, but they actually did like trees and swamp backgrounds.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was really nice. Okay, so where we get to with this, we also around this time see the guy that was initially dubbed the creepy old guy.
Yeah, the creep, I've called him. Then a creepy old geezer shows up giggling.
So thoughts on this guy initially? Certainly would say they look relatively suspicious. Certainly something that I think as a child, if I saw it, I'd be like, yes, you're the villain. But of course, Scooby likes to bring a twist in, and let's just say it's not going to be exactly that way.
He looks like Old Man Smithers.
Okay, I can see that, can work with that. So he, I believe, warns all of them about the ghost of Redbeard. So they kind of know what they're dealing with. They decide to kind of unite a little bit because they're all lost in the fog. And they are warned by the man about the ghost. So they work together and they find a house to stay in. Now, this is where that guy gets even more suspicious, because you see him dragging chains and things, trying to scare them off. And something that kind of was resonating with me a little bit here is, oh gosh, what's the episode? Is it Sandy Duncan? The episode where they accidentally, well, it appears accidentally, almost showed who it was because they weren't in disguise. We just saw the manager.
That may have been episode 1, the first one with the Three Stooges.
Quite possibly, but there was one episode where there was a manager not in character that kidnapped Velma, so you knew it was him.
Yeah, I think
and I was kind of thinking, like, we see like the Phantom with the chains and like iconic Scooby-Doo, and I'm like, is it meant to be that you're just not putting a disguise on this character? And really started to believe it was them.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It's weird. It's kind of strange when they do stuff like that, and sometimes you almost need to wonder about the background of it. Like if something like, oh gosh, we heard recently, it was one of the What's New interviews where a scene had been cut, but then they rewrote it so it made sense, and it could have been like something was cut, they didn't have time for something, and so the way things have played out may have just been for convenience more than anything, or
Perhaps.
I don't know. It's an old one, early 70s, I think it is.
Something else that I really enjoy in this episode is while they're in that house, they have a game of basketball.
Oh, I love that.
And I love how they just kind of make do with everything. They get this basket, this bin just pinned up on the wall, and that's one of the baskets, and just kind of make do. And ultimately, the gang hold their own quite well, right?
Yeah, I think it's the animators' time to shine, really. Like, for all we have had a lot of comedians on, like, the new Scooby-Doo movies, and of course the writers can do what they want, dialogue-wise, quirky-wise, but I think the animators really have a lot of fun, though. Like, for all the Globetrotters are making jokes, for the scenes that they're not, you get action, essentially.
Yeah, certainly. And honestly, shortly after this, when we first see the ghost of Redbeard, and I was caught off guard here because when I picture the ghost of Redbeard, I'm picturing they wear a red outfit, they with like a pink sash across the middle, or kind of ginger beard and stuff like that. I don't ever remember seeing them just as a plain figure.
It was literally that same design, though, right? I think they must have just gone through like the archives and
So
just.
when is it that we see the colour added? Do you know?
What do you
remember?
when?
The image of Redbeard, because
We never do we?
well, how is it? I've got this kind of but like throughout Scooby
Are you
history.
kidding me?
What do you mean?
It was a What's New, Where Are You episode.
So have they reused?
Yeah, I think so.
The
It was
same
the
villain?
one, that episode, I don't remember what it's called, admittedly. I think it's called Go Away Ghost Ship. And it's the episode that has that trending TikTok where the floating sword goes to Shaggy and he says zoinks, it's the gay blade of the ghost again.
Okay, so in my defense, I do actually have memory issues. It is kind of a big issue.
You
for
like
me.
Dory, you like a cute Dory one.
Yeah, my short-term memory is honestly kind of done at this point. So
But you just keep swimming, so we admire you for that.
But one thing that's interesting here is they have redone the animation style from Where Are You. It certainly is like far superlative in my opinion to the initial animation style. For all it's the same. I'm guessing it wasn't a cheap kind of cop-out decision. I'm gonna say it's been done purpose, like that. I'm gonna say they did this for a reason, because for me,
Yeah.
Daphne looks so much better than she did in Where Are You. There's certain like facial features, things like that, where the animation's really been increased, the backgrounds have as well. So I feel like this was a conscious choice as opposed to doing it just because they already had that character.
It's a weird one for me, because they have the model, they have the character, they have the colours, they must have the coloured model sheets. Or maybe not, again, maybe they were tossed out and all they had was the other one, but I can think of no other reason why they're not coloured in than ears, because they do mention in like a line, how do they look like they're glowing? Oh, it was because of this, but they're not glowing, they're just white, like,
Yeah.
and we've seen, well, okay, I don't know if the technology is there, I don't think we've seen a glowing thing yet, but we do eventually with the 10,000 volt ghost and stuff. It's just, to me, I'm thinking, I don't know what's gone on, but I don't see any reason why it would be not coloured in apart from ears. But it doesn't take away from it. It, if anything, adds a bit of intrigue.
One issue that I do have around this time of the episode is the amount of the pirates. So at this point they get into the house and, you've got all the gang, all the Globetrotters going head to head in this all-out war. And it seems like there's more pirates than there are, because you only initially see 3. But they seem to split up and then reappear all over the place.
Yeah, they must be like hard boys, right? Just loads of hard boys.
But I do think the sequences where the pirates and the Globetrotters are confronting each other are really fun. And there's some where they really utilise basketball. Like, there's one where they just bounce a basketball on a pirate.
I like
And
it.
it's kind of fun. I like that.
Because I like how they actually try to fight back. For all I'm not a big fan of when they use like physical force on the villains, really. That's not just the elaborate traps. It's like, when you think about it pseudo-realistically, there's 3 dirty old men, like, in suits.
Oh my gosh.
Then you have the gang of teenagers and a whole basketball team. If they don't try and fight back, then there's something wrong, right? Like,
you'd think so, and
I almost think they if it was real life, they would have won.
I'd say physical violence, like you say, isn't condoning anything, but I think the fact they used this basketball to almost make it a comical thing worked well.
I think the pirates would have got sparked in real life.
One thing I will say about this though is like I'm almost disappointed in Miss Drink and the Harlem Globetrotters. You know when the main pirate Redbeard turns that light on, and it's clearly just a projector like you'd give to your child to see patterns on the ceiling to help them sleep.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, you're so much better than believing there.
Oh, this is what annoys me about this episode. Ultimately, if it was 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I think you would have such a great episode. But I think there's just so much that repeats itself, almost plot for plot. That
there was one place where the episode could have ended.
Yeah,
the end of the scene in the house. There was enough. They were behind them enough to trap them then.
Because they ultimately do the same thing. Like, it's the gang confront Redbeard. There's a big fight. He gets his projector out and everyone gets spooked. And then they like have a little bit of shenanigans where Shaggy and Scooby fall down. And then we get Sin on the boat and in the dock. Big fight. Everyone's like throwing hands. Redbeard gets his projector out and everyone gets a bit spooked. Like the exact same thing happens, and I think it's just to fill runtime, which is a shame because it wasn't boring. I'm glad that we do get a longer episode with the characters and with the action, but it's just you can tell that it could have been a lot shorter and maybe like easier to not follow along, but to just consume and have fun with it.
Yeah, certainly. And honestly, at this stage, like it's kind of like they do need to drag it out further, so a helicopter appears and the pirates make a swift exit. So, in that exit plan, everyone tries to track them down, and Shaggy and Scooby end up in the pirates' boat as they're heading back to kind of like their secret lair, which is behind a curtain. So Shaggy and Scooby are leaving a Scooby snack trail, and the gang try and chase after them. So at this point again, we see Swampy Pete on the radio, and it's kind of like I feel at this point I was starting to work out that he was a good guy. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if you kind of were getting any vibes about them at that point.
I didn't get that he was a good guy. I knew that he wasn't on the pirates team because when they get to that sequence and they're like, oh no, that Swamps guy is like, you know, warning the pirates about us on the radio, but then you never see the pirates receiving any communication. So at that point, I'm like, there's more going on, but yeah. I should have really got it because they do that a lot. I feel like they did it in the Tiki episode, they do it here, they do it in Zombie Island where some shady guy is just an undercover detective.
Okay, so ultimately, Shaggy and Scooby-Doo get discovered, and there's a chase scene on the boat with Slippery Sam. So again, kind of this is where you were talking about almost getting that repetitive element, in that we start another chase scene, the gang catch up, the Globetrotters with the gang, everyone gets involved, and there is, you know, a long chase scene that ultimately is resolved by Swampy Pete kind of saying, look, jump over the side, I've got you.
Yeah, and I did like it, but it could have been done before. But I like how Velma's questioning him, like, can we trust you? Because it would be a bit weird to suspect someone the entire time without a bit of dialogue when they eventually like turn themselves around. I just feel like with the gang, at that point, it may have been more appropriate to reveal himself logically and say, look, this is the situation, do this. Yeah. Apart from just banking on them, trusting this creepy old guy, like, to solve the plot. See,
here's one of the issues I have with this episode is, as soon as they jump off with him and everything, I believe the police helicopter arrives again, and you assume that the police helicopter resolves everything. The unmasking is actually of Swampy Pete to be Lieutenant Duggar, but I feel like we don't get any closure with the ghost of Redbeard, in that you don't get an unmasking for them. There's been no other characters introduced throughout the plot that it could have been. You just very much are left to assume the police handle it from here and it was a man in a mask.
We get told it, which I guess is cheaper than showing us it, but then cut out a bit of the repetition and give us what we'd expect. Like they could have saved money on that second fight scene if they gave us the unmasking. For better or for worse, I think it was a bit of a shame to miss out such an iconic part of the franchise.
What I'd say is, the scene on the boat?
Oh yeah.
That chase scene could have been cut in half. Because it's restored so many times, like when the net gets dropped on 3 of the pirates that somehow get out miraculously.
It is dragged out.
They could have cut that in half and had the unmasking, or alternatively, I don't even know we needed the second chase scene, to be honest. But the episode is, I think, kind of concluded well in that we get the basketball game that you would have hoped to see from having a sports star within the mix for the episode, although I don't think they have the most practical take on basketball. It certainly was any referee would have disqualified anything that they did.
Maybe it would be like what crossover influencer basketball would look like if they did it.
Quite possibly, but I think for me that kind of concludes my notes on the episode.
That basketball game is my second favourite scene in the whole of the new Scooby-Doo movies.
Can I ask what your first is?
I think it's when Daphne gets gagged in
I hate
the
you.
Sandy Duncan episode.
Moving swiftly on, JayBee, smash or pass?
This is an easy smash. It's a bit of a shame because I smash it and then I'm regretting it a bit after, but not really. It's like, I love the episode. I had a lot of fun with it, but there's more. Because I love it so much, I think I care about it more, and so I can't stop thinking about the 3 or 4 things that I would have done differently, but it doesn't take away from the episode, so it's an easy smash. What about you? Do you smash or pass this Globetrotter?
I mean, I would say there's some glaring holes in the plot here, like I say, about not having the unmasking and everything. There's some certain things that really are kind of like, oh, how did we not get this right kind of thing. But at the same time, this is honestly the most fun I've had with one of the new movies so far. It has been my favourite of all of them. I think the Harlem Globetrotters just added such a fun element that even surpassed the fun that Shaggy and Scooby bring sometimes. I think, there's, is it Don Knotts who... And not Don Knotts, who was the one after the first Don Knotts episode? Can you remember?
The one after what?
Who threw his voice?
I know it. Give me a moment. Because they were meant to be in the Curse of the Late Ones. Jonathan Winters.
Jonathan Winters. Like, I feel like they tried to do a similar thing with him, make him quirky, make him funny, and it was annoying. Whereas with this, they did the funny thing really well, and I really enjoyed it. So it's a definite smash. Like I say, there are glaring holes in the plot that just could have been done better, but ultimately what you want when you watch something is a fun time, escapism, and you definitely 100% get it with this episode. So I appreciate that this is an episode from the archive to a lot of people who are perhaps a young generation of Scooby, but for me, I'd 100% recommend going back to watch this one.
Yeah, it's definitely good. Definitely good. And I'm impressed that in the late or the early 70s we're getting some black guests as well. That's cool.
So at this point we have wrapped up with this episode, but I want to head on to the community news section just in case there's anything here. I mean, it's a Friday, so we've got an interview heading out tomorrow. Am I okay to...
Yeah, reveal that.
So, recently Morgan Baden released the 3rd of the Daphne and Velma book series, and we have the pleasure of speaking about Buried Secrets with her in tomorrow's episode.
Yay! So that's a really good one. There's some like funny things that you wouldn't expect necessarily to be in that interview that I think you'll really enjoy that. So a really cool time. We're completing not only Morgan Baden's, or I guess the Daphne and Velma trilogy, but also our trilogy of interviews with Morgan Baden. So that's pretty cool. Now, next up on the review side of things, we're going to be reviewing the Haunted Horseman of Hagglethorn Hall, which I think is guest starring, I think it's a repeat, but I don't know. But it's the Haunted Horseman of Hagglethorn. I don't know. The Haunted Horseman of Hagglethorn Hall. So if you do like the Haunted Horseman of Hagglethorn Hall, please comment down below if you're excited to hear a review on that and some of your takes on the episode. So yeah, if you do want to hear more reviews like this, then please like, comment, and subscribe.
We'll see you next time.